I'm Helen,
And I'm Liz,
and we're sisters
scientists,
and lifelong X-Files fans.
and this is We Want to Believe.
All right, so today we're talking about Season 1, Episode 2, Deep Throat. And do you maybe want to give a
Yeah,
recap?
sure. So it opens with a SWAT team coming up on this suburban home in Idaho, and they are saying this woman's husband is believed to be armed and dangerous. He commandeered a vehicle from a military base, and then they go in and they find him undressed, covered in what looks like a rash, all over his body, rash or burns, and he's kind of cowering in the corner. And then we launch into the classic X-Files opening, which we didn't have last week, which I
That was
missed
exciting.
so much. It's so wonderful. It's longer than is popular nowadays, and
Yeah, it is.
honestly nowadays I get really impatient when there's a long opening on shows and I tend to skip them. But this is so good. But I don't know if it would seem good if I was watching it. Like, would it seem cheesy if I'd never seen the X-Files before, with the phrases that pop up and the kind of dim lighting and still photos? Like,
Probably? I don't
I
know.
feel like it probably would,
Probably.
but
Yeah,
whatever, it's awesome.
it is.
And I still get a thrill when there's that pause, that beat right before the truth is out there pops up on the screen, and you're wondering, what if it says something other than the truth is out there, which it occasionally does. If you didn't know that, it's always a thrill.
And now I'm excited to watch as we're watching from the beginning to notice when that first happens. Like, I don't know
Yeah.
what the first episode is where they don't have the truth is out there.
And I have no idea when that happens.
Yeah, same. They also list in the opening credits some of the people that are guest starring.
Yeah.
Seth Green.
Seth Green. Yeah. First of, I think, many recognizable guest stars on the X-Files.
I feel like was he in it later too? I feel like wasn't he in another one? Or am I thinking of someone
I
else?
think you're thinking of someone else, but I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Because I feel like there's people who I sort in my head similarly as like teenage dudes from the 90s who were on there. I thought he was great though. Well, we'll get to his role in it, but I thought he was great.
Scully already looks way different.
Yeah, I thought so too.
Which was
I agree.
weird. And I know they do that like between the pilot and the next episode.
Yeah,
But her hair was way different.
I thought so too. It looked poofier.
Yeah.
Yeah. I didn't hate it, but it was different. I think I assumed that Skinner would show up because, again, I thought maybe that was an addition after the pilot. Still no Skinner, assigning them a case. Yeah.
Yeah. That's right.
No, it opens then after the opening. It's Mulder and Scully are in a bar. Mulder asks Scully to meet him at a bar.
Yeah, which was also kind of weird.
Yeah, and I thought about that, and I think the only reason they must have done that is so that Deep Throat could approach Mulder in the bathroom, that he wouldn't have been at, Mulder's office. So
Right. So they are in a bar, and Mulder walks into the bathroom at one point, and this is after they start talking about the case a little bit, and an older man walks into the bathroom behind him and locks the door, which just sounds like it's going to be a way different story
yeah,
than what happens. And starts telling Mulder basically to leave it,
yeah,
to leave it alone.
yeah, and he knows his name.
Right. Yeah. We don't find out who that is though.
No.
Which I thought was interesting. They named the episode Deep Throat. But
Yeah.
actually,
I had the same thought that they call the episode Deep Throat. You see him at the beginning and then you see him again at the end, but they don't refer to him as that. You wouldn't know why it was called that necessarily. On the other hand, I think when that was airing, episode titles were less well known. People didn't pay attention to those as much. Yeah, I mean, when you watch TV back in the 80s or 90s, people didn't really think about episode titles too much. I think that isn't how, I think that's from what I recall, that's why Friends chose the episode titles that they did, the one with this, the one with that, because that's how people naturally would refer to episodes. So they thought, hey, let's title our episodes that way.
yeah, I guess that's true. I mean, you just knew when something was going to be on, watched it,
Yeah.
and it's not like they said it anywhere.
And because you weren't selecting through and choosing it, even on like I mean, once I was in college and watching this, at least we had the DVD menus and we
Yeah.
were choosing them. So it was a little different there.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was talking with another roller derby player on Tuesday night about this, and she was saying, because she's a huge fan and watches it pretty much every night to fall asleep. Hey there, Raven Lunatic, if you're listening. And she was saying, yeah, I don't really know the episode titles, like that she's not good at that. And so,
Interesting.
I mean, I wonder if just depending on how you first encountered the show, maybe it's not something that you pay attention to or pick up on.
Yeah. Okay, so I want to go back to the guy shaking in a corner covered with abrasions or
Yeah.
a rash of some sort.
Absolutely. Let's go back.
And that's the cold open. That's before we meet Mulder and Scully in this episode. And so I don't know if we want to talk about what I think could be causing those burns and abrasions now, or once we get into what could be going on with that guy.
I mean, let's talk. We may as well talk about it now because they don't explain it exactly.
Well, yeah, right. And I'll tell you, my first instinct when I saw that was to think of radiation burns.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I know that pilots in general are exposed to much greater than normal amounts of radiation and a higher incidence of things like melanoma in pilots. You're nodding.
I'm nodding and smiling because a dear friend of mine used to resist vacationing with me because he said, no, it will, if we fly too much, it'll increase our risks of melanoma. And I thought, that is clearly an excuse because you just don't want to go on vacations.
That's not how it works. Exactly.
Yeah, I think the average person's vacations are not enough to add up to that. But in the case of these, so this Colonel Budahas, the guy who's covered in those burns,
That's his name.
he is a test pilot, so that would make sense. He's up there all the time doing weird stuff.
Right. And if there's some sort of weird, as we'll get into, technology or aircraft or something that he's in. And also, I'm vaguely remembering stuff about radiation coming later. I want to say seasons 3 and 4.
Yeah, I have the same vague memory.
Right. So that sent me down. I was looking up, seeing if I could find more information about pilots and radiation. And they kept talking about cosmic radiation, which is something I wanted to talk to you about because I don't know what that means.
Oh, sure.
It's from space.
Yeah, well, like from the sun, right? So radiation is just a fancy word for, you could say, light.
Okay.
But remember, light is not necessarily visible light, right? Electromagnetic radiation, that's light. It can be microwave, it can be radio wave, it can be gamma ray, right? And it just depends on the wavelength or the frequency of it. It can be visible, it can be infrared, and plenty of those would cause burns, right? So the higher you get, if we didn't have an atmosphere, we would have more issues with that because the rays coming in from the sun would not be reflected. Yeah, we're shielded by our atmosphere from a lot of that radiation to a degree. I mean, more than we would be otherwise. And so the higher you are up, the atmosphere is thinner, and so you're not shielded in the same manner from the radiation from the sun.
So this is a possibly stupid question, but all things being equal, so I know being on Venus would kill you. I mean,
sure, in all sorts of ways, yeah.
Right. But assuming we were just on Venus, but it was like Earth, but we were just that much closer to the sun, would we have higher amounts of radiation?
Well, so yes, but well, yeah, the thing is Venus has a really thick atmosphere. And so if I can quote from NASA's website, Venus has a thick toxic atmosphere filled with carbon dioxide, and it's perpetually shrouded in thick yellowish clouds of sulfuric acid that trap heat, causing a runaway greenhouse effect. It would be a very bad place to live, but not for that particular reason, the radiation. Yeah.
But like, let's say we just moved Earth to where
sure. Oh, sure. Yeah, absolutely. The closer you get, the more you're going to get it. In the same way that like, that's the problem with the podcast medium is what I really want when I talk about physics is a whiteboard. And you're basically, the closer you get, if you can imagine like a cross section of a sphere of radiation around the sun, if you're closer to it, it has not spread out as much.
Okay.
Right. If you can imagine like rays coming off the sun, the further you are away, the more those rays are spread out.
Right. The wavy lines that I draw when I draw suns.
Absolutely. Those wavy lines.
I'll have to be more specific drawing them now that I know. Okay, so cosmic radiation basically just means coming from the sun. There's no sort of weird radio.
No. I mean, I would say, like, technically anything that's glowing in space would be cosmic radiation, but no, they're talking about the sun. Yeah.
Okay, okay, cool.
Also, then the reason Mulder gets interested in this is because he then disappears, which
Right.
I was not totally clear on the transition from in the house, cowering, covered in burns, to gone.
So I think what happened was they then took him to a military hospital.
Yes, there we go.
They wouldn't give him back. So
That's right.
he wasn't exactly disappeared in that they didn't know where he was. It's that they wouldn't release him or let him have any contact with his wife.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
There we go.
Mulder, when they're in the bar, is talking to Scully about how since 1963, 6 pilots have been missing from Ellen's Air Base flying experimental aircraft. And Ellen's Air Base is the fictional air base in southwestern
Yeah.
Idaho, which I did look up because
So did I.
I don't know what all the air bases
Yeah.
are.
They have an air base in Idaho,
Sure.
Mountain Home Air Base,
Oh, really?
not far from Boise, not
Oh.
known for experimental aircraft or anything.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Seems pretty normal.
I enjoyed and wrote in my notes that during this discussion in the bar, Scully gives a very long, suffering sigh.
Yes.
We've seen a lot of.
Yes, like the classic Scully exasperated sigh.
Yeah. So then Deep Throat confronts Mulder. Later, him and Scully are on the phone, and he thinks his phone is being tapped. And so they end up flying out to Idaho to talk to Mrs. Budahas. And she starts telling them about how 2 years, even before this episode and this disappearance, he started developing a rash. His personality was unpredictable. She says how he sprinkled fish food flakes all over his food at one point, and he was increasingly angry and would have episodes that kind of seemed like seizures. And then this part, so then they talk to her, they go to see another woman whose husband had been adversely affected by whatever they were doing, another test pilot. She's really pissed off that Mrs. Budahas
Right.
brought them to talk, which I didn't entirely get.
So I have a theory about that based on what happens at the end of the episode. So at the end of the episode, spoiler alert seems like a weird thing to say for a number of reasons, but
From 1993.
for a show from 1993 that we're about to talk about the ending of in like a few minutes. But at the end, Colonel Budahas has been returned, but he's not acting normal. He's not acting like himself. And so initially his wife is very concerned and is asking Mulder and Scully for help and saying, that's not my husband. But then when they see her for the last time, she's like, won't let him in. And she's like, everything's fine. Nope, no concerns. Later, and Mulder says they got to her. They threatened her. And so my guess is that other woman who's mad at Mrs. Budahas for bringing them over had also been threatened maybe in the same way and was like, hey, I know I'm not supposed to share about this. So
Why are you?
doing that? But I mean, that's just my interpretation. I'm not sure.
So then they leave that other woman's house and kind of talk about how Val talked to Mrs. Budahas again. Scully mentions that the man they just saw might have stereoptopy.
Yeah.
And so I did a little digging into that. So the guy, as we see him, the other affected pilot who's not Colonel Budahas, he's plucking out his hair and kind of making little
like fly fishing lures?
Yeah. And so stereoptopy is like a repetitive behavior that people can sometimes have under stress.
Yeah.
Were you going to say something?
I looked it up too, and yeah, I wrote persistent repetitive behavior with no obvious purpose. It's seen in some people with autism spectrum disorders. It's also seen with like stressed out zoo animals, which really depressed me. Yeah. And so I felt like, okay, that's what he's doing, but I didn't personally get much out of that. Okay, if that's what that guy is doing, what do I do with that information? It didn't seem like that's just describing the behavior. It didn't tell me what would be causing it at all.
Right. Well, so then though, Scully mentions that it's been seen in POWs.
Oh.
So I did some digging. This brings me to my first source.
Ooh.
And so I wanted to see if it had been seen in POWs and under what sort of situations.
Hmm.
And I found a few more recent references from like the 2010s that ultimately didn't tell me much. And I am not going to bring up those because that was later. But there was one big study that I would think Scully was probably referencing from 1967,
Oh.
and it's called Long-Term Effects of a Prolonged Stress Experience. It's by Kral et al., and it's from a Canadian psychiatric journal. And they looked at World War II POWs. And again, this was in 67, so this is about 20 years post World War II. And it looked at, I thought this was really interesting methodology. They looked at POWs who had brothers who were also in World War II, but were not also
Oh,
POWs.
that does seem well designed, doesn't it?
Yeah. So they were
Yeah.
looking at a comparison in symptoms between these two groups, and they found a significant difference between the POWs and their brothers, who again were also in the war, but not POWs. Increase in tension, anxiety, depression, memory impairment, some other things like ataxia, cranial nerve involvement, reflex changes. And so this was all kind of interesting in kind of a passive way. What I did find interesting though, and this is why I'm bothering to bring it up, is that they did measure stereoptopy, and there was no significant difference in that.
Oh. Oh, okay.
So
So,
that's all.
so not true.
Yeah.
Interesting. That's
So
great.
Scully read
That's
the
great that you
abstract.
looked at that. Okay,
Yeah.
come on, Scully.
So anyway, moving on.
They go to the Flying Saucer Bar.
Yes, they go to the Flying Saucer Bar and they talk to a server in the restaurant about where to see UFOs.
And she just seemed delightful, by the way. For some reason, I was like, I would love to have her as my server. She just seems so nice and helpful. Anyway.
Also, if I were her, I'd be like kind of annoyed at having Scully as a customer.
Yeah.
And so she gives them a map. They point out that the airbase is not on Scully's government map,
Right.
which presumably I like to think is, oh, well, then maybe Ellen's Air Force Base does exist.
Yeah, absolutely. We don't know. There could be Air Force bases all over. There could be one.
One next door.
Exactly.
Yeah. And the bartender waitress, she gives them a map to the base and they follow it and they're waiting in the car.
And it's great, by the way, just to see them paper maps. It's like
Oh, right.
that Scully's map that she has, her official government map, is giant and paper. I loved that.
Yeah, they also look through a phone book at one point.
Yeah.
So after they talk to Mrs. Budahas, they then go talk to another colonel
Right.
who basically tells them to leave it alone. I don't actually know.
I don't really know what the
about
point of
that
him was.
interaction.
And I do also want to mention at some point in there, a journalist talks to them
Yes.
and is
Right.
just like, doesn't do much, but you see him, he's dressed in a very journalist way, I thought, with jeans and a blazer and he
Glasses.
gave off glasses. Yeah, he gave off a journalist in a movie vibe. And they just kind of, you just see him briefly and he'll come up again.
Yeah. But yeah, they found that other colonel's address in the phone book.
Right.
Like, it
Right.
seems so wild to me that, like, we just could look up people's addresses. I mean, like, I guess you can now too, but it seems
It seems somehow much harder. Yeah.
you a book full of
Yeah.
addresses.
Yeah. Yeah, the white
That seems
pages
so
seems
stupid.
so bizarre. Yellow pages seems reasonable
Yes.
because you do need to get a hold of businesses.
Yes.
White pages does seem very weird.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah, that was a thing that we did.
it is weird. Yeah.
Yeah. Mulder also mentions the Aurora Project.
Oh, yeah.
And that was, I don't know if you looked this up as well.
I did not.
Oh, okay. I felt like I had heard the term before, probably from the X-Files. And it was just basically, it doesn't seem that, what's the word? Like controversial, that the government is basically experimenting with different space and air technologies.
Oh, yeah, that seems like, well, of course they would be. Why wouldn't they? Yeah.
Yeah. The Aurora Project itself, I think, was more focused on if there was this specific type of aircraft, and there was something where the military budget or some sort of budget for a certain year was a little off, and it referenced Aurora or something like that, and so people were conjecturing.
Okay.
So they follow the woman's map. They're waiting in the car, and Mulder wakes up Scully. She fell asleep at some point, and it says it's 9:30 p.m., which I want to point out. And they see two lights moving strangely in the sky.
I was like, I'm still into this. Those lights, I was on
Yeah.
board. I'm like, this is creepy and cool. I still think this is cool,
Yeah.
so many years later, 30 years later, I was like,
Oh my
they're
God,
moving
it is
around.
almost 30 years.
Yeah, it's like 30 years. Yeah.
Oh my God.
It's
Yeah.
deeply unsettling. That's the X file. How did 30 years pass? But I really liked how they were moving. I was
Yeah.
like captivated. This is
Yeah.
good. I am on board.
Yeah.
Yeah, because they move, it's almost like they're like, it reminded me of like two fireflies
Right.
playing like
Yeah. Like,
my dogs do, but also giant in the sky.
right. They're very clearly not moving in like a normal pattern for something flying in the sky.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. And then as they're watching, two teenagers come out from the fence of the Air Force Base and start running around the same time that a helicopter starts flying towards them.
So they go up to the teenagers, one of whom is Seth Green. And at first the teenagers are like worried that Mulder and Scully are, gonna get them in trouble. And instead they all four start running from this helicopter.
Yeah.
And is there any other details? They end up at a diner so the teenagers can like eat, but I think I'm missing something in there.
Well, so basically they're running from the helicopter and Mulder's like, okay, you're coming with us. And
Yeah.
they all get in the car together and drive away. So this is why I pointed out the fact that it had been 9:30 when they saw those lights.
Mm-hmm.
Suddenly it says they're at the diner and it's 5 a.m.
Oh,
What were they doing for so many hours?
I mean, are we meant to think they watched those lights for like 7 hours? Or
Can't have, because
that the diner was 2 hours away? Like, I'm not sure. Where did that time go? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's the real X file here.
Yeah.
Real
Yeah.
life.
Time is the real X file.
Yeah. No, because they were watching the lights and then like immediately they saw the helicopter coming.
Yeah.
And the Air Force Base wasn't supposed to be that far away from the town in general. And so suddenly it's just 5 a.m.
The weird thing is that there is no reason not to just make it a different time
Or
so
not
that,
show the time at all.
or not show the time. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, why couldn't it have been 11?
Yeah.
Are we supposed to think like that's how hungry and stoned the kids were? Was that they've been eating this whole time? Or, like, I don't know.
Yeah. The kids tell them how they've been going there and watching these light shows, and they also reference another place where they say like, oh, that's where you can really see some stuff at Yellow Base. And they say that they go at night, and then Mulder shows Seth Green's character this the photo of this triangular UFO that the waitress at the bar had shown them that he took with him. And this was my favorite line is Mulder says, holding up the picture, do they look something like that? And Seth Green says, no, they look exactly like that. And it was awesome. And then, they're getting in the car and Scully is like skeptical and is like, do you believe them? Like, they're so stoned. If you showed him a picture of a hamburger, he would have said they looked like that. And I did wonder, are we meant to think Mulder totally believes them? Is he like, how critical is he of their source? I don't know.
Right. I don't know either. Also, we see that reporter watching them from the window in
Yes.
the diner.
Yes.
And I believe he's talking to someone
Yeah.
walkie-talkie or something.
Mm-hmm.
And at one point, Scully says, just because I can't explain it doesn't mean it's UFOs. And I feel like that summarizes everything I want to say.
But then Mulder says unidentified flying object. That makes it a UFO.
Yeah, true. Yes. So then we see it's morning again. We're still that day. If it's 5 a.m., I don't know. And Scully is talking on a payphone, which,
Right.
like, God, a payphone.
They get cell phones pretty quickly because I remember them having these enormous cell phones. But I guess at this point they don't even have those.
Yeah. Ugh. Um, and she was on the phone with Mrs. Budahas, and they get the message that Colonel Budahas was returned back to her last night.
Yeah. And I have some questions about this scene.
Yes.
So she's panicking. Mrs. Budahas is panicking. She's saying, "This is not my husband." So they go over there and he's kind of sitting there calmly. And Mulder asks his birthday, which by the way is November 21st.
First, yes, in 1948. Zach's birthday is 1984, which
Ooh,
I also thought was
suspicious. And
in on all of this. This is going to turn into a true crime podcast.
yes,
Once we realize that Zach is behind all of this.
of course, Zach is also our sound engineer, editor, and everything, so he can just edit all of this out,
Right, that's
and the
what
public will never know.
we'll
Yeah,
know, though. Yeah,
if you're hearing this, Zach is
innocent.
probably not a secret
just covering
alien / government operative.
Leaping Hound Travel has you covered for all of your travel-related needs. Specializing in quirky European tours, they can either help you plan your next getaway or can take you along on one of their fantastic group packages. I had always thought getting a travel agent meant that either you were spending more money or you were paying for something that you could do yourself. After using Leaping Hound to book mine and my wife's 10-year anniversary trip to Paris, though, I'm never going back. Plus, Leaping Hound is owned and operated by husband and wife team Adam Stanley and We Want to Believe's own Liz Holden. It's so much easier to just call Leaping Hound and tell them what I'm looking for than having to check 10 different websites trying to find the best price. Leaping Hound is offering listeners of We Want to Believe $150 off one of their group tours, including a vampire-themed tour of London and Paris in 2023. Just enter the promo code BELIEVE at checkout. That's BELIEVE at checkout for $150 off a group tour when you go to leapinghoundtravel.com.
Anyhow, I noticed also Colonel Budahas is a Packers fan,
Yeah.
which was a random, nice thing living in Wisconsin. What I was not totally clear on, given, as you mentioned, that he'd had some episodes where he was really aggressive and really strange a couple years before, why is his wife so sure it's not him? And why is she so afraid? Because when Mulder asks him this question about can the human body sustain at 8 Gs, and he doesn't know, he sort of freaks out, like, why am I missing that memory? And I just feel like if I were his wife, I feel like I'd be like, oh, honey, you've been through so much. What did they do to your memory? But she still seems very afraid of him. And that seemed odd to me.
He gets up and kind of moves towards her, and she like backs behind Scully, like she's afraid of him.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I mean, she mentioned that he had been having episodes of anger too. So I don't know if that was part of it. But yeah, that's a good point. Why does she think it's not her husband? Unless she's speaking in more of a general, we're taking it that way, but she means like, this is not the man I married. Something has happened.
Yeah, I'm not totally sure.
I did want to point out that when they first get there, they shake hands with her. And I just found that very weird. Like there's some part of me post and current pandemic that was like, oh, whoa.
Yeah. Oh, we're just touching strangers with in our hands, and we'll put our hands near our faces. Why not? Sure.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
why not just put her hand directly in your mouth?
We were watching the live action Beauty and the Beast.
Mhm.
And very innocently, Hugo, my 4-year-old, goes, why aren't they wearing masks?
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so weird. I don't know. Oh my God.
Yeah.
Oh.
And then it turned into a whole thing, because then we were trying to explain, like, well, this was before the pandemic. But then it's like, well, this was also, first of all, it's fiction. And also it's supposed to be like 1700s. So
Yeah.
way before the pandemic.
Yeah.
It turns into more complicated. But
Wow.
yeah, it's weird though.
So Mulder and Scully they drive off, they get pulled over by dudes in suits and sunglasses.
I want to talk first.
Sorry, yeah.
As they are walking to the car, Scully says something about how you can't just erase certain parts of a person's memory.
Right.
And so I looked into that,
If I had to guess, I would say you can, but I don't
Yeah.
know. Yeah.
So there are certain ways of doing that, and most of them are coming from more recent sources. I don't know if you remember a few years ago, people started talking about how they were developing, I want to say developing technology. That sounds too X-Files-y. But looking into ways of removing like memories associated with PTSD
Yeah.
and other sorts of traumas or like addiction memories. And
Yeah.
people were comparing it to that movie. I can't.
Oh, Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind.
Yes.
Yeah.
I actually never saw it because I hate
Oh.
mystery.
Oh, no, it's really good. It's not like The Mask or something. It's really good.
I do like the bracelet.
Everyone write in and tell Helen to watch Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind.
Isn't it like super long?
I don't know. It's movie length.
I don't know.
It's pacey. It keeps it moving.
Is it?
Yeah. And I think it's like it does a really good job of like examining like Kate Winslet's character is this like, manic pixie dream girl like type, but then it's like she's like, no, I'm a real person and I'm messed up and you can't just, think I'm just going to be like magical and fix your sad life. And
Oh,
it's kind of tragic, but also kind of hopeful. And I think it's great. But anyway, oh yeah, it's so good. I mean, I haven't seen it in years because it's a little bit, intense, but it's quite good. It's very good.
I don't ever want to. I don't know. Like I've also never seen Forrest Gump.
I don't know. I don't feel like I'm not going to pitch that one as hard.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
No.
I'm never in the mood to watch.
I mean, that's the
If I watch
thing.
something intense, I'm gonna watch the X-Files.
And I at least feel like if I'm going to watch something intense, it's got to be like a murder mystery. Like there's got to
Yeah.
be murder,
Yeah. I'm not.
It can't just be a drama.
Like right. Yes, for dramatic, making me think about how hard life is. Like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That I will accept. Just Jim Carrey is not enough of a reason, but I will accept that. Yes.
He really annoys.
Yeah. We'll
Anyway,
I have a lot of thoughts about Jim Carrey. I like him. Anyway, go ahead.
do?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah, he seems like a really interesting guy. And
wasn't he involved with? Wasn't he?
Oh.
Jenny McCarthy.
good God, I totally forgot about that. Is he an
Yeah.
anti-vaxxer?
Yeah.
Oh shit. We're back
Yeah.
at anti-vaxxers. Well, okay, I forgot about that.
Yeah. I mean, you can still like him as an actor. I mean,
Yeah, I do. I mean, I'm like the right age where even though I think
Yeah.
Ace Ventura is a terrible movie, I have these warm associations with it, so.
Yeah. So people have talked about being able to do that,
Mhm.
be able to erase certain memories. And there's been some evidence that that's possible. And then, of course, like we just got into, it gets into the whole ethical thing of should you do that?
Mhm.
Do you want to do that? So I started looking it up and I found an article titled Neuron Loss and Dysfunctionality in Hippocampus Explain Aircraft Noise Induced Working Memory Impairment.
Whoa.
Resting state fMRI study on military pilots. So
Whoa.
I was just looking up stuff. It felt very, very Scully like, where I'm like looking up something else and I'm found the perfect thing to explain this.
Wow.
And it's by Chang et al. And it's coming from Bioscience Trends, which is a literary journal, or not a literary journal, a scientific journal, even though it sounds like a magazine or something. And so they were looking at memory loss and neurological issues in the hippocampus because of how loud it is in
The idea,
planes.
the idea that how loud it is could cause memory loss?
Yeah. And so,
God.
right. So they looked at a number of fighter jet pilots and in their 30s. And they went through some mental and cognition tests and also looked at their brains under MRI. And they found significant differences between those who were exposed to increased noise than those who were not. So I thought that was very interesting.
Yeah.
So I don't know, maybe it's all just the flying that's getting this guy down.
Yeah. I mean, probably not, as we see in a few scenes, where's what they start doing to Mulder. But that is a really interesting relationship. Wow.
Yeah, so I don't know. So maybe he's just
Yeah.
exposed to too much UV radiation and noise, and it's messing with
Yeah.
his brain.
Yeah.
That seems pretty reasonable to me.
Yeah. In sort of an acute way. And it also doesn't explain why he was gone for 4 months, but okay.
Why the military
Yeah.
would want to hide
Yeah.
is, of course,
Yeah.
a different issue.
So they get their stuff taken by some dudes with sunglasses. They pull over, the guys are kind of roughing them up. They take their stuff, they take that picture of the triangular shaped UFO.
Right. Expose their film.
Right.
And
Right.
yeah.
Yeah. My gosh. Yeah. I thought it was odd that it was so crucial to these creepy guys to, from the Air Force Base or whatever, to take that photo with the triangle UFO, given that the woman's had it hanging in her bar called the flying saucer for ages, presumably.
Well,
Like,
and she said it was a print. She said something about selling prints.
right.
Like, yeah,
Yeah.
maybe they were just feeling vindictive.
Yeah. They're like, well, while we're here, we'll take this.
Yeah.
And it's around then that Mulder decides he talks to Seth Green and his girlfriend again and finds out where this yellow base is. And it's daytime and he's going to just hike in. He's going to go under the fence and they're like, oh, but it's like 10 miles. That's too far. And Mulder heads in. And I just want to know, good God, what was your actual plan here? Right?
I just feel for Scully so hard. I mean, like, if that was your partner,
I would be like,
I mean,
we cannot keep going this way.
I would lose my mind.
Yeah. So 10 miles, let's say he's walking at 3 miles an hour. We're talking, if he walks,
Walking more 4 miles an hour, but
I don't know, he's tromping over grass and
that's true. It's
everything.
always like-
And I mean, like, is he going to pause at all? I think 3 miles an hour over that terrain is a reasonable estimate. I mean, we're talking over 3-hour walk, which seems not insignificant to me.
Yeah.
And what's he gonna do when he gets there? He gets there, he's on the tarmac, and a UFO, it's now nighttime, a UFO kind of shines on him. And then he's taken away.
Not by the UFO. An ambulance and some sort of other car starts chasing him, and he starts running, which also I was like, Mulder.
Yeah.
You're not gonna
Good luck with that. Yeah.
Yeah, and so they take him, they throw him on a gurney and put him in the back of the ambulance.
Yeah. I
And
was not happy about that injection. That really freaked me out.
Really?
Scully's trying to find him another nice 1990s technology thing. She's like, I can't get a long distance line. So she can't get through to anyone. Mulder is all foggy. He's going through this building. He can see what looks like UFOs being like worked on kind of behind these barriers. And they're going to do something bad to him. They're putting he's on an operating table, it looks like, and they're putting a thing on his face to knock him out. Oxygen mask.
That was around the same time, though, when they were giving him the injection. Like, because he was fighting them hard when they were trying to give him the injection. So I took that to be some sort of gas just to get him to calm down enough that they could give it to him.
I know that they gave him the gas on his face again after he'd already been wheeled through all out of it.
Oh, okay.
So my take was like, we're going to make sure you're super out before we go for your eyeball with this thing, which is
Don't
what.
show that.
No, but they
No.
show his eyeball and they show the thing.
Yeah.
Which had very Fire in the Sky vibes, which,
What is that?
did you ever see Fire in the Sky? So
No.
you would have been too young when it came out, but it was, when I was in 5th grade, it was the talk of 5th grade because it was a special on TV and it was one of those ostensible, based on a true story, but not really, things. And I don't know. I didn't look into Fire in the Sky, but I remember it. I didn't watch it at the time because I don't know if I would have been allowed and I knew it would have been too scary for me. But it's about these people who say they've been abducted by aliens. And it's mostly not too scary until the very end when it's showing what it was like when they were abducted by the aliens and getting stuff put in their eyeballs and stuff. Yeah. I watched it later when I was like a teenager or something. And it was, again, not nearly as scary as I thought it would be until the end. And then I was like, well, this is quite unsettling. But yeah, it reminded me of that. And that also would have been probably, Fire in the Sky probably came out about a year or so before this episode would have aired, maybe 2 years before. So
It all has a very lobotomy like.
Also
feel.
lobotomy. Yes.
Yeah.
Good call. Yeah.
So then we see, so Scully is trying to get a hold of him, of Mulder, or no, or the field office.
Yeah.
She's trying to get a hold of someone. And we see that reporter again.
Right.
And they showed that Scully had left her gun in the hotel room and the door was open. And we see her talking to him and she kind of feels in her back waistband and it's clear she's checking for her gun and it's not
Mhm.
there. And she ends up jumping in the reporter's car and locking him out and taking his gun.
And of course, the reason she's suspicious of him to begin with is that she's coming back from trying to get that long distance line and he is inside her hotel room.
Right.
Right. That he's like, oh, the door was open. Yeah, that's normal. And yeah, so she jumps in his car, locks the door. I thought it was so smart and quick, and goes to get his gun and also sees he's got a walkie-talkie there and there's someone there saying stuff to him and it doesn't seem like a journalist.
And they also show his badge that says airport security or something like that, which again, yeah.
So she pulls the gun on him, gets him at gunpoint and says, fix this, basically, get Mulder out of there. And they pull up to the Air Force Base and they bring Mulder out and he is super out of it
Yeah.
and doesn't remember anything.
Yeah.
And it's so clearly whatever procedure they were doing on him, they got to finish.
Now, this is where I want to talk about what like actually could have been happening. So the not reporter.
Yeah.
I don't know if we learned his name. He says here, as they're like doing the trade-off, he's getting out of the car and Mulder's coming out of the airbase. He says, I just want to say that everything you've seen here is equal to the protection we give it. It's you who've behaved inappropriately. And I feel kind of like, yeah.
No, I disagree because they are the ones that took him inside where he saw all of those ships and everything.
He was trespassing on their
I mean,
property.
okay, he was trespassing, yes. But I think also behaving inappropriately is strapping someone down and putting a thing in their eye. I'm going to call that inappropriate.
I don't know that they put something in his eye, though.
Well, they were aiming it at his eye. I mean, they put they did something to him. I think, I mean, it's not like they had a sign, trespassers will be strapped to a gurney and experimented on, you know? And even if they did, I don't think that would make it right. So I feel like, yeah, they saw stuff they weren't supposed to, but I disagree that they.
I don't know that. I don't feel like we ever were shown anything that would make me that makes me that suspicious.
Yeah, I guess, well, we saw something that, was standing over Mulder or, flying over Mulder that sure looked like a UFO or like a US plane built with UFO technology as they hypothesize. But
do I believe that the government is building experimental aircraft? Yeah.
Probably.
I mean,
why wouldn't they be? Yeah.
Very controversial stance.
Yeah. So what exactly? So that's what you said. You want to talk about what are they actually doing and hiding?
Right. I mean, maybe they're using some sort of UFO technology, but I don't feel like they're showing anything that exactly points towards aliens as much as just the government is messing around with aircraft and maybe being unethical with taking care of their pilots and letting families know. And again, I feel like, yeah, right? Like,
but I mean, maybe that's worth hiding. Just how crummy the government is being here.
Yeah, but again, I kind of feel like, but don't we know that? I guess that's my point. That maybe we didn't in the 90s.
Oh, I think people didn't trust the government. I mean, I think that's what made it so appealing was this sense of like, ooh, they are up to something, Yeah, so I guess I would say this is like a classic Mulder Scully sort of split where you could interpret this in two different ways. Right. They're hiding their technology and their abuse of their pilots, or they're hiding their ties with aliens to get this technology. And you could interpret it reasonably in either way.
Right. And I mean, knowing where things go, I mean,
yeah,
it's pretty clear in hindsight. But I think if I were just watching this now,
for the first time.
Yeah, I wouldn't see anything that seemed that weird.
Yeah,
I don't
like
know. I
anything
feel
that
like if I was
anything that definitively points at UFOs.
yes, yeah, yeah,
Mhm.
exactly. Yeah, I mean, like, definitely shady stuff, but I would expect some level of shady stuff from the military,
Hmm.
and I don't see anything that really says alien.
Yeah, yeah, that I would agree with. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Scully writes up her report on a computer with a blue screen and white text, which is awesome.
Yep.
They see that, Mrs. Budahas, they say, oh, they got to her, she's acting super creepy, but I mean, she's, not,
Yelling in the background.
yeah, what it struck me as is like, she has an abusive partner is the vibe I was getting there, which is really unsettling. I assumed they were going to burst in, and then I realized there's only 4 minutes left in the episode, and they weren't. And then Mulder's out jogging, and Deep Throat, the old man from the beginning in the bar, finds him again. And I wrote down what he says to him at the end, Mr. Mulder, they've been here for a long, long time.
Oh,
About,
yeah.
and that I thought was super creepy and
Yeah.
definitely points at aliens.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
given your point that nothing else necessarily did, it seems like, well, Deep Throat, if you hadn't said that, maybe there was a case that it wasn't. But he does end up being helpful. So
Yeah, and I don't know. I found the whole episode kind of anticlimactic, honestly.
I could see that. I do feel like I had a lot of questions about the pilot, but I think I found it a little bit more captivating. This one I felt a little bit like, okay, and like,
Right. You're using the word pilot to mean the first episode, which is
Yes.
called pilot.
yes.
Yeah, agreed. Right. This I feel like I definitely fall with Scully on this one.
I think that I would at least make a case for that. I think that the main reason not to is what Deep Throat says to Mulder at the end, honestly. Like, yeah.
Same. Yeah. And next week is Squeeze, which is
Yes.
already giving me nightmares just thinking about it.
Now did you have nightmares about Squeeze back in the
Oh,
day?
yeah.
Awesome. Sorry.
No,
Yeah.
that's okay. I'm
Squeeze.
looking forward to it.
I'm looking forward to it. It's the first, as they call the Monster of the Week episode. And oh, I am ready for that. Yeah.
I haven't been able to normally look at air vents since probably 2003. So we'll see if that holds true.
I have a lot of things to say about that. That's with Toombs, Eugene Victor Toombs. So
Yeah, next week. I'm excited.
Yeah. All right.
Well, let us know what you think. And as they say, rate, review, and subscribe, please. That
And
helps us.
share, tell people.
Share, yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks. See you next week.
Bye.